Hello there, welcome back to the Thera mod Abridged, where previously we ran our way right through the Vikings, who put up very little resistance to our advance along the top of the map. We also pushed the vampires off our continent and pushed onto theirs. Then we had a declaration of war by the Tahar Caliphate, who we currently have 3 fronts of war with, and they've already taken one of our settlements. We'll be seeing them more in a second. First, on the Viking Front, we had a very lightly defended place under siege. Looks like a few guys showed up to try and reinforce but didn't start anything. So we sneakily auto-resolve our way into the town, a very bad auto-resolve, and now we're on the inside of the settlement. That's a little bit better. In this case, we could actually leave the settlement this turn and just plough on east because the next place over is poorly defended also. But since we don't know very much, I just thought I'll sit here and see if the Vikings attack me. Not really a particularly special place to defend, it's just a town with basic wooden walls. But as it happens, we do get attacked, a whole bunch of stuff shows up, and a siege begins. So if we had split our force, we might have been in trouble there. We'll sit around and hope they attack or something and get themselves killed. Meanwhile, the big fight is happening with the Taha Caliphate, because an army comes and attacks the army I had besieging the yellow Spanish guys. So while we've nearly completed that siege, now we need to win this battle to keep it going. The enemy have brought absolutely loads of archers to this battle, so we need to keep that in mind. Standing back and trying to have an archer battle might not be the best idea this time, that's what I usually go for. They've also got some two-handed sword guys who are slightly better than our two-handed sword guys, so that's inconvenient. And of course they've brought some elephants along, so we need to deal nicely with them. Luckily we do have some grenade troops in our army, which are particularly useful against them, according to someone in the comments in the past. And here they are, stamping their way forwards. Racing ahead of them are a bunch of camel archers. They kindly come out on their own, so all of our archers can focus them down at the same time. This leads to a very brief skirmish where we quickly win, but then their main archer line will set up to start bombarding us, and this is where we want to not sit around. I'm going to select all of my melee troops and just run forwards in a vague line. There are some melee enemy troops in that mix, so we are going to get stopped in some places. I noticed a couple of their melee units are coming off towards the flank, probably going after my generals. We're just going to run behind them. Similar deal on the left flank with our commanding general. That's our faction leader, I believe. So here we go. Time to see what we can do with a general charge. We need to either get those archers into melee, or get them skirmishing back behind the enemy's melee troops, ready for when our cav are back there in a second to attack them. Which is right now actually. You can see the enemy are getting into position, but it's not ideal because they've got random melee troops just standing around doing not much towards the back. So we need to micro around them a little bit. Still, we have got quite a few of their archers into melee. Their elephants are going to be in that melee as well, that's not going to be so good. But we do have measures against that. I ordered my archers to attack them, and perhaps more importantly I'm sending in our beehive throwers, whatever those guys are. They throw some kind of grenade, and that's going to come in handy. And here we're already getting results. We're seeing mass archer rout / skirmishing aways, and we're behind them, so we can immediately capitalize on this. At this stage, we can take out the majority of the enemy army, bit by bit, without them really fighting us, and their scant melee presence can be beaten back just with their own pirates. And it came down to just the elephants really. Luckily the elephants did get taken out, eventually, by the combined bombardment of fire arrows and our grenade things. They take a long time to prepare and throw, and they don't throw them very often, or a lot of the unit doesn't throw most of the time, that's what I should say. They're just throwing the odd one, but it's enough. We cause the elephants to die or run amok, and as you can see the rest of the battlefield is just covered in bodies because we just absolutely slaughtered their mostly archer based army as it moved away. We eventually take down the last of the elephants. They could still kill us while they're running amok, so it's not quite as good as routing, but they're just very unfocused. The battle wasn't over because they had this one unit of archers that somehow got forgotten, just sitting on our flanks, gradually killing me. Looks like I finally noticed them and ordered someone to kill them. Here's the eventual result. We lost like a quarter of our army, but we took down all of the enemy army. Not too bad, and we're still good to go for another battle, which is convenient, because here's another battle in the very same turn. The force we are holding under siege Sally's out. This is the last turn of the siege, I believe. So this army's been under siege for like 8 or 9 turns, and you can see many of the units in it are nearly dead as a result. They still have quite a lot of balance bar presence, which is surprising given how many of their units have single figures troops left. But still, given that balance bar, I thought we better do this one manually. Again, we could move back and stand on a bit of a hill to help us have our shootout. Here they come, charging at us with a tiny unit of cav, and the first volley of arrows gets all of them, so that's the first wave. But now the second wave is coming in with some bigger units of heavy cav. So the risk here is that they might just plough through our front line. I was just hoping we'd get a volley on them before they hit us, and indeed we do. It doesn't quite stun lock them, but their charge doesn't seem to do very much, and we killed like half of them on the way in. Over here where there's another charge, we can take advantage of our grenade throwing guys, because the enemy gets stuck on our pirates who don't break or anything like that. Then we gradually throw these grenades, which will be doing some friendly fire damage, but nobody really minds about that. As long as we're killing those heavily armoured enemies, that's going to help us out, since we don't really have anything else that's good at doing that. Eventually they pull back, ready to cycle charge I presume, and then they get hit by some more arrows, thinning them out in both groups. And that's really going to be the end of that. Their general was in this group right here, and shortly after this he was killed by the arrows. So that will help out. We are, though, being shot. The enemy have a whole bunch of long-ranged gun units. I considered moving down the hill to attack them, but what I really wanted was to just stand still so that we could get the archers to kill them first, because even though they'll outrange us a bit, we can draw the enemy in by just shuffling backwards and forwards with our melee line, and once the enemy are in skirmishing range, I felt like we'd win. And they messed up by putting multiple units on top of each other here, so there's probably some mutual line of sight blocking going on. They ended up not shooting us that much, so that's okay. Meanwhile, their scant melee units remaining are going to be drawn off to the flank by the looks of things by my gun cav. That's going to help out. Eventually I just run forwards with everything. It's time to get this one going. We can charge in and take out their gunners in melee, and our cav will go up both flanks to do the work. Our faction leader with his cav unit actually lost a whole bunch of guys, because one of their gun units right at the back was sniping at him throughout the whole battle. I didn't really pay much attention. But luckily that gun unit is now going to get attacked by our other generals, and this is going to bring the fight to an end once we rout those guys. We ended up chasing stuff all the way to the castle because the cav from the beginning had stopped routing, so the battle couldn't end. Eventually they came back outside, routed again, and that was that. We got this result, not that many casualties, and this will mean the castle now falls to us at last after a very long siege. Although our faction leader survived, he actually died of old age a couple of days later, so that was a last glory for him. And this is kind of good for us, because you might remember our faction leader sucked in terms of his authority, so now I'm checking who's the new faction leader. It's some random guy over here on the Fire Island, and this guy has maximum authority. His other stats aren't very good, but max authority will help out quite a lot. That's going to allow me to move troops around without generals in a less risky fashion. Handy. I actually am a bit stuck here, because the army at Machu Picchu is trapped by this enemy rebel army. I could walk into their zone of control and then walk out next turn, but what I decided to do is actually try and take these guys down. I set up as if I'm about to do it, but then I don't, because I thought I'll bring my other army from the south end of the island up, which is going to take a few turns, so we'll come back to that at some point. In the meantime, we've now built up armies ready to fight the Tahar Caliphate back on our main continent. We move out immediately to besiege that place right there. There were some spaces in the army, so I thought I'll bring over guys from the east as reinforcements. Due to some kind of misclick or something, we managed to actually not link up with the army and walk past it and run out of movement points. Good stuff, but the idea was there. We also moved down the west coast, just walking past enemy armies on the way to go straight for the siege to take back the place we lost to them previously. So now we'll leave both places under siege and see how the enemy react. We're also under siege up here with the Vikings, as you may recall from minutes ago. And I decided I'm actually not going to let them attack me. I'm going to do a night battle sally, because then we can kill the smaller portion of their force on its own, go back inside, and just make it a bit harder for the bigger force to then come in and attack us. That's the idea anyway. So we head on out, and the enemy run back to stand on a hill, following my own advice from earlier, but it's not going to help them, because we have so many archers we can just start aggroing them back off the hill by firing at them. and they eventually start charging at us. That's what we like to see. Makes my life easy, especially because if you're the player, moving your formation about is kind of difficult, so it's nice to just stand still as much as possible. Makes me very much appreciate the feature in later games where you could hold Alt or something and just drag your formation across the map to move it without everything messing up. Very handy. As you can see, they just run at us, get hit by a whole bunch of arrows on the way in, and then start getting surrounded by our melee troops. Our axe throwing guys are trying to fight the enemy's axe throwing guys. I think they're on the right, so a nice battle of hatchet lobbers. And on our left, we've got the enemy general engaging us, but my generals are behind them, so we're going to sneak on in for some guns to the back. Nice to get as close as possible because I guess these pistol cav are super inaccurate given the effective range of a musket pistol is like 0 meters. So we blast away at them, this aggroes them back towards us, and we can just activate skirmish mode to run away from them forever. And this is handy because with them getting out of the melee, they'll come back into the line of sight of the archers nearby, so we can hit them with arrows as well. Going to start actually bothering to micro my units now and try to win this battle. And one thing I did was fire arrows up at the general. He ends up getting aggroed back and forth between my general shooting with guns and the archers shooting with arrows, and gets stun locked a lot, gets killed a lot, eventually routs, and that's going to bring us victory in this battle. After all, it was a bit of a grind. The enemy didn't rout as fast as they usually do this time, but good enough, still a decent trade, and that'll just end the enemy's siege. We're going to let them do another one. We're not going to attack the army outside or anything like that. I just popped out to see if there were any mercenaries to hire. Unfortunately not. So yes, we'll just sit here and see if they attack again, but if they do, it will be a bit easier than it otherwise would have. I'm also trying to bribe some of their lesser armies, as we can see, but so far no army I've ever approached has accepted a bribe. I've tried it several times. Just seems to be not happening no matter how much money we have in the bank. Maybe our diplomats suck. We were then put under siege by 2 armies, so still looking a little bit challenging, but we're just going to leave them to it and hope some kind of defender's advantage. Makes all that work out. We won't bother doing any sallies, even though we could again do a night battle sally and just kill them both one by one. That certainly would be possible. We're though going to focus on this battle because the Tahar Caliphate sends an army to try and break one of the sieges we set up on them earlier. Annoyingly, I don't have my reinforcements in the main army, as we saw earlier, so we can't use all of our forces together even though we do have enough space. The enemy have brought absolutely loads of archers again, so I need to keep that in mind, but they are a bit more balanced towards having melee stuff than they were before. So we're just going to stand around and take that rare thing, a defender's advantage in a field battle. And we actually get pretty good terrain for this. We had a really steep hill right in front of us, so I just sat there. However, the enemy were actually killing me from this opposite hill across the valley. They were hitting me with arrows, and I was like, what's actually firing at me? Something's got really good range and accuracy. They were killing me quite quickly. Whatever it was, they stopped firing because they then continued on down the hill as I originally expected. So we took a volley from something, not sure what it was, but now we're fine. Now they're going to stand at the bottom of the hill. That's what we want. We'll shoot arrows down on them and grab some kills, and while they're going to be shooting back up at us, no doubt. I think arrows are less powerful shot uphill. I think height changes both the range and the missile damage of missile attacks, although I don't know, since it doesn't actually specify. We're also waiting, kind of, for our reinforcements to show up, but the enemy are just charging us, so we're probably not going to use those extra units. Somewhere in the mix, we accidentally kill their general with our arrow attacks. So that's a great start to the fight. And now their melee stuff has to walk uphill towards us, nice and slow, taking a load more casualties. Looks like our gunners are sort of behaving today. They're firing at things. They certainly have a bit of line of sight over the top of our lines. So I'm hoping to see some good results from them. Not that we'll actually see them. I hope they'll be going on in the background, I should say. They've got some heavy camels coming at us on our right. I'm going to try and shoot them down with our gun cav. And elsewhere, it's just a general brawl as usual. We are taking large-scale casualties from the enemy's archer attacks now, but this is where we begin to stop them with our other gun cav units going in to rout and skirmish them away, and we do get a big block routing right away as we attack. That's handy. We're getting flashy numbers death from these melees, so that's not all that good. I think their heavy camels might have really high stats or something. They are owning the pirates up, and we're hoping our guns from the cav will gradually kill them. Wasn't happening very fast, but this little bit of the fight, while not going very well, doesn't matter too much because we're starting to turn things around at this stage. Our reinforcements are now showing up, so can participate a bit. Our cav attack on their archers has been very successful, many units routed and destroyed, many others distracted. We don't have quite enough coverage to get everything, but I'm also charging some pirates forwards now as well since our centre was cleared up. We're soon going to have all of their range stuff in melee. And as you can see, we managed to rout everything here on the right, except for the camels, who I'm just ignoring, trying to get the archers to kill them, while my gun cav run on to exploit the routes. We see another general killed, not sure which one was from which army, but now that they're both dead, everything definitely has a morale shock. And it's time to finish this thing off. Our reinforcements arrive to melee charge the archers, and the archers and the reinforcements can shoot the back of the enemy's melee stuff, and at about the same time, we see them routing, so that's going to be the end of this battle. We'll now chase them off the field, because this is also a siege draw-out of sorts. We want to kill absolutely everything, and take it to the maximum possible percentage kill that I can be bothered to do. We end up here, a bit of a messy one, but not such a bad result in the end, especially because the loss of all those pirate units is negligible really. We can just get some more at any time. And we did get the percentages we needed to take the settlement as a result of the battle, so that's an extra prize. All good stuff. Right after this, the army can move out, because the Tahar Caliphate also sent an army to relieve the other siege, but they didn't trigger a battle. So they're just standing over there now. We can go over to help out. There's me carefully putting a watchtower, not on the road, I do learn sometimes. And then we charge in to attack their relief force. It just moves away, and with that, the town, which has basically nothing in it, is in trouble. So we can just instantly take that, and there we go. I didn't sack them because I've already sacked this place before, and I guess my rule is you get one sacking per campaign. We're nice pirates like that. Then we can move out and just take out that army outside the town with overwhelming numbers. Or at least we could if we manually resolved it. We actually get a not very good auto-resolve where both sides lost about the same amount. Good stuff, but at least the issue's gone. They retreated away, and we'll soon be after them to go on to the next town. There's also a fort in our territory with a few survivors, so we'll just siege them out for a bit and kill them later. Next up, we had another general betrayal over in our little center map enclave. Some guy tried to go over to the vampires, but we move out and kill him, and the guy who kills him then gets promoted to be a general. So we ended up with the same number of generals, although this guy is worse. On the way home, thought we might as well kill this random rebel army that's hanging out. You might also note there's a rather large Tahar Caliphate army sitting in the corner of our territory up there. We're just ignoring them. They can attack the castle if they want, and that probably won't go very well for them, so don't mind. Here's me sorting out the whole Fire Island final mess to clear the path out of that territory. This balance bar wasn't very good, but I didn't care enough to fight, so we auto-resolved it. Was okay-ish, not that good, reasonable for an auto-resolve I guess. And that's that. Now, we're going to combine these two stacks to make one decent army. I've got the ships ready to ship them out, and we'll have a new army to play with somewhere. Meanwhile, we're advancing against the Tahar, and we see their next settlement isn't that heavily guarded, so we're just going to plough in and go for this one. I'm also, for some reason, not bothering to finish off the siege of their fort I had up top, so that's just going to be left while I forget about it, I suppose. We are, though, going to advance down the east coast with a newly prepared army of mostly trash. We encounter a castle that's not that heavily defended, and again just start the siege, waiting to see what will happen with that one. Now back up to the Viking Front. The two armies that had us under siege go ahead and make an attack. The balance of power seems to favour them. They've got tons of rams, which isn't too useful, a couple of ladders and a couple of siege towers. The second army has nothing, of course, so they won't do very much until the first army finds a way in. To start with, our priority will be to spam fire arrows and see if we can stop any of these siege pieces. Luckily, with these lower level settlements, the walls aren't so big, or the little parapets on the wall aren't so big, that it glitches the archers, meaning we can actually fire at the siege equipment relatively effectively and try to set them on fire, but that doesn't mean you can actually do it. I don't know how much it actually takes to set something on fire, but it's more than the amount we could provide. It was handy in later games when it told you how much fire damage something had. Anyway, they end up coming over the walls with both siege towers and both sets of ladders, and their ram moves into place. So we've got 5 things to deal with. With both of the sets of ladders, the first ones that are attacking us, we've got pirates ready to fight everything climbing over the top. That's going to be okay, because our pirates are okay in melee and the enemy aren't attacking with anything special. We can still try to set the siege towers on fire even after they're in position by continuing to rain arrows on them in some cases, literally raining on them, probably raining on our own troops as well by the looks of things. And there in the background you can see we do set one on fire successfully. Meanwhile, our general is helping out with the other one, sniping into the exposed flank of this unit, and perhaps the morale shock of being shot at helps rout them, so now we can finish those guys off, and the 2 tower attacks will have been successfully stopped. The enemy don't have anything else coming up to follow up on that other tower while it's still there, so that's why I say it's kind of over. They're just going to ignore it. And the on fire tower has a unit inside it that's just standing there, and they now fall down. I can't remember if they actually die when this happens. It seems to vary from game to game. I think in Rome 2 they definitely don't die. Maybe in these earlier games they do. Whatever the case is, they're beneath the wall, and that way of entry into our town is now secured up. As for the 2 ladder fights, we essentially just won them both. We were able to rout the units coming over, and like with that other siege tower, once the first unit that comes in with the ladders dies, the AI doesn't seem to like sending in a second unit to try again, so effectively those fronts are secure as well, and it just comes down to the ram. But we don't have a way to stop the ram, so eventually the gate is open. However, what we see is when they come through the gate, they're extremely unwilling to fight. We move forwards and they rout upon melee contact, so that's absolutely perfect. We're not going to have to do very much to actually hold this gate. The fact that the gate is now open will mean the second army, which is on the other side of the map right now, will start making its way over, but in the meantime, we're just facing the already damaged first army, and with them being that easy to rout, that's looking pretty good. We've got plenty of units spare to defend the gate, and they're just coming in and routing one by one. Here we are a little bit later, when some of the more serious units are holding on under the gate. We've got our axe throwers here hitting them in the flank and dealing some extra casualties. That's going to soften them up very nicely. And yes, this goes on for a bit until they lose more stuff, the blob routs, and the gate fight appears to be won. Then we're essentially waiting for the second army to show up. The balance bar is still very much in the enemy's favour because this untouched second army can now come in through the gate. On the way though, we've got units ready to hit them with arrows and activate the towers, so they're gradually taking casualties as they just stroll alongside the wall, going all the way around the town to reach the open gate. It's the same deal here on the other side of the town. The army's been split in two to go around both sides essentially. There's still a bit of action while we wait for them to show up, because some difficult to rout units like their general's bodyguards are hanging out still in the fight. In this case, these guys were refusing to die. Our melee troops weren't doing very well against them, and the towers that are constantly shooting them barely do anything. In the end though, we've got some gun cav who can snipe up handily onto the wall, and this volley kills a whole bunch of them. There's more where that came from after that. And in this fashion, we're going to be able to take out this general and his bodyguards. There's another unit climbing in behind them by the looks of things, but that's probably another case where they just came up, routed, and went back down. We're still working on taking out that other siege tower, by the way. For some reason, while the first siege tower to burn went down relatively easy, this one just sat there the entire time, getting hit by volley after volley. I think the invisible fire damage stat might be constantly declining with time, so you have to have like 4 units firing on it to stop it from declining faster than it's going up. Essentially, nothing happened except we used up some ammo, and eventually stuff showed up to actually start attacking us again. And this second army does not shy away from using the ladders and the still active siege towers, and now we do have to defend these points. Although again, we saw things routing the moment they came to the top, so we're still in a good position, and it's the same thing at the gate. They came in, fought for a second or two, and then routed. Annoying that we didn't get that second tower because they are actually using it, as we can see. I need to reposition a bit to get them into combat, and that's probably going to be enough to get rid of them in this situation. Again, no idea why their morale is so low, but they're not enjoying this whole affair. Here you can see that once quite a lot of their stuff died at the gate, I started charging out with the cav because all those routing units are routing with a lot of their strength left. We need to fight them again to stop them from rallying and coming back. That wouldn't be the end of the world, but it's a bit nicer to kill them now. We're doing some classic medieval 2 movement jank. If we just keep giving move orders, our guys will eventually weirdly glitch their way through the enemy and push to the other side using their mass. And after that, we're free to chase after those routing things. Some of them actually did come back from routing while I was chasing them, but then went back to routing once the cav hit them. So that's all good. And the guys I was forcing my way through have now routed as well. That's pretty much the end of the enemy army, but the battle actually went on for a while longer. because they had a couple of units over here in the north corner of the town that weren't dying very well. I think part of the reason is, you can see on the left there, some of their guys are kind of Blair Witch projecting it off in the corner, just staring at a building, and their unit got split up, and that's going to mess up the pathfinding AI and stuff. Eventually, some more guys came and stood awkwardly in the corner here. I think everything just died at this point, in terms of the AI's ability, that is. So we need to convert that into some in-game death for these troops, trying to attack them with fire arrows while also trying to attack them with axe throwers, getting my own men killed, all good stuff, and the enemy are just not paying attention whatsoever. Eventually, with the arrows and the axe throwing and the tower shooting at them, we rout that general's unit there. He tries to escape and our cav outside kill him, and with that I can quit the battle with basically everything on the enemy side dead. A heroic victory, good stuff. We did take moderate casualties. Those fights to protect the tops of the ladders weren't all that good, just because our pirates aren't all that good, and archers were in melee sometimes. But the enemy armies are dead, and we're probably going to be able to move on against the Vikings from there. But at the start of the next part, we'll be looking at this battle actually, because the castle I went to besiege with my inferior army down the east coast of the original continent gets attacked, and the enemy have the advantage here. It would be best to just withdraw in this situation, but we can't because we have no movement points apparently. So we're going to fight this one, win or lose, and see how our little trash stack army does.